Good morning, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. Today we're going to be back with the Cambridge Checkpoint book. Let's bring both the course book and the workbook and start together. A new unit is going to be dealt with today. It is Unit 11, Looking Back. We will be reading a text and then we will solve its questions. After that, we will explain the meaning of non-sentences. The following point is going to be writing a character sketch. And finally, we will explain how to use used to. Before we start doing anything, we need to read the text on page 135 until 137. It's important to read this text because we're going to rely on it for most of the lessons. Most of the exercises will be related to this text. So you can stop the video right now and start reading. If you already read, let's have the answers. The first question is, list the topics the writer refers to in text 11a. These are all topics which you usually find in a memoir, writing about memories. So what are the topics that he talked about in each paragraph? Well, he talked about getting up, about the food and drink that he had, the meal times, going to school itself, friends, lessons, and relatives. All these things were mentioned in this text. After that, we have B. B says, can you say what the writer does to make the text more varied and interesting for the reader? What did he do to make it interesting for us? Well, he gave names for people and things, examples, specific details. He used quotations, a wide variety of sentences like complex, compound, non-sentences sometimes, which we will be explaining later, and a variety of punctuation, questions, brackets, dots, inverted commas, hyphens, and capitals. Why was that important? Because when you read, you wouldn't feel bored. Not everything is on the same level, so you read in a different ways. You have all these techniques that he used. In this exercise 3a, we will be dealing with synonyms. Last week, we explained how to choose the best synonym possible. So all the tips that we gave, we will try to put it into consideration when we deal with these words. So first you have missed. The synonym here would be skipped. It is the same part of speech. It is also fits in the context that was given. All the things, all the tips that we talked about are in using the synonym. Hated, loathed, collect, heard, gathering, assembly, throw, toss, and sling, endlessly, limitlessly, expression, countenance, sorted, categorized, chewing, knowing, and describe would be relate. Exercise 3b. He talks about how simple the text is, most of it of course, especially the beginning of it. You have it all in simple sentences, no connected, no compound or complex sentences. So what we will do here is to try to connect sentences with all the ways that we know, using conjunctions, using relative pronouns, everything that we learned. So here you will have an example answer instead of having short sentences, then having a full stop. So you can do it in this way, using so, using but, using and. Here also you have and so. The text became better using these conjunctions. Now we will explain something called non-sentences. And from the name, you can know that there is something missing. It's not a sentence. So the first thing that you should know that any correct sentence should contain a subject and a verb. This is the minimum of what you get to make grammatically correct sentence. Here we have some examples. James sang. Although this is a very short sentence, it makes complete sense and it's grammatically correct. Why? We have the subject, which is James, and we have the verb, which is sang. For the other sentence, Mark is here. Why is it a sentence? Mark is the subject and the verb is. This is a linking verb. So when the sentence doesn't contain these important elements, or any one of them, like the subject and verb, what do we call this sentence? We call it non-sentence, or some people call it fragment. The example is here, beautiful girl. You would instantly know that this is not a sentence. Why? It lacks one important thing. Verb is missing. So how can we make it a correct sentence? By adding a verb to it. By saying, a beautiful girl came. We need to avoid writing non-sentences because as students, we have to have these right grammatically correct sentences. So when do we use it? When do we have non-sentences? We use non-sentences for making dramatic effect. For example, if you have a movie or a series or anything, and by the end of it, you hear somebody say, no sound. You would know here that there is no verb. It's not a grammatically correct sentence. That is for sure. But you are doing it, or you are using it to make a dramatic effect. In dialogue, when people speak, sometimes they only say nothing. Okay? It doesn't contain the elements that we need, like verbs and nouns, but it's still used because in dialogue we use it. Also in informal and colloquial writings, not in the formal ones. These are some examples for non-sentences from the text that we have. It's exercise 3C, page 137. Very big ones. This is not a sentence, no verb here. So non-sentence. A long tick or a big cross. Again, no verb. Ditto everything else. Again, no verb. The A in cat, the O in boy, etc. This was a sentence in the text too. It doesn't contain a verb. So all of these are non-sentences. Now you should read text 11b on page 138, 139. After you do, you will have these questions. The first one is, why do you think adults patted the boy on the head and pinched his cheek? Well, the answer is they were showing affection for and approval of him by touching him in his friendly or in this friendly way, in which adults often touch children. So it was like a kind gesture from them. Now with B, find the following images in the passage and explain them in your own words. The first one is quick as a Jenny, as fast as a magic spirit from a bottle. See? For number 2, give rein to my imagination. So it means allow my mind to freely imagine things. And finally, tribe of giants. It means a race of extra large humans. Now for explaining something called writing a character sketch. What's a character sketch? It's a short description of a character based on their traits, on their qualities. Okay? So here are some elements for character sketch. You have describes at least 2 traits of the character, 2 qualities, 2 things that the character has. description may include information about what? About the character, how he looks like, about what he says, maybe about what he does, his deeds, and also for what he thinks and feels. Finally, what other people say about the character. Okay? Remember here, when you're writing a character sketch, you should keep it short and simple. And you should mention at least an example that shows the qualities or the traits of your character. Here we would have an example about a character sketch for exercise 4C on page 139. They want us to speak about the boy in the text that you already read, 11b, and the grandfather or the adult. So try now to stop the video and write a very brief sketch. Describe how the boy was in all the terms that we talked about and mention what he does. If you already finished, here's an example for a character sketch about this boy. We can say that the boy loved learning, had a good memory, was imaginative and perceptive, understanding his grandfather's needs without anything needing to be said. He enjoyed both studying the Quran and playing in the river. He was devoted to his grandfather, who was his role model. That character sketch is short, simple, yet very effective and describes the boy in all aspects. Now for the grandfather, we can say that the grandfather was proud of his grandson, his favorite grandchild, and was emotionally affected by the boy's ability to recite from the Quran. He was strict about the importance of study and religious observance. A very simple thing is going to be explained here, which is used to. We use used to when we talk about things in the past. So remember, there is no present or future form for used to. Why do we use it then? We use it for things for the past. How do we use it? We use used to, then a base form after it. So we cannot say I used to played. It should be I used to play, base form without any additions. We use it for two purposes: for repeated past activities or for situations that are no longer true. Here's an example for situations that are no longer true. If I say I used to smoke, but now I don't. So in this case, you're mentioning that before you were smoking, while now you don't. Now we will explain sentences that start with negative adverbs. These negative adverbs are like nor, never, neither, no, and rarely. There is something important happens here. When you start your sentence with these negative adverbs, the order of the subject and the auxiliary verb is inverted, which means one takes the place of the other. Like the sentence given here, I have seen him. You can say, never in my life have I seen him. Why? Because I made this changed. I put never at the beginning of the sentence. So there is inversion between have and I. There's an important note here. Whenever you have a sentence with no auxiliary at all, you should bring an auxiliary and make this change. For example, this one. I never drove a car. You cannot say, never I drove a car. You should say, never did I drive a car. After finishing all the important parts for the coursebook of today's lesson, we will move on to the workbook and start with 3 exercises. Exercise 1, 2, and 3. So the first one is very important to us because it deals with non-sentences that we explained. Here we have some non-sentences as phrases or simple words, and we need to make them correct sentences by adding a verb and a subject. These what make any sentence correct. So now we will start with the first one, never again. An example answer for this one, to make it a correct sentence, I will never do it again. See, I have I as the subject and will and do as verbs. B, no big deal can be it isn't a big deal. As for C, because I say so, to make it correct, you must do it because I say so. D, maybe and maybe not. Well, here it's not non-sentence for sure. How would we make it correct? We would say maybe it is, maybe it isn't. In this case, it would be the correct sentence. Finally, and so to bed. And then they went to bed. See, adding all these subjects and verbs make any non-sentence a sentence, makes it correct. Now for exercise 2, the sentences below describe repeated actions in the past. Rewrite them using would. Because we've studied all these things using used to, now I will let you do this one with would, which is very easy. Like every year, we would go to the mountains for our holiday. Okay, so just using would for past actions. For exercise 3, it explains what we said about negative adverbs coming at the beginning. So we have some sentences here, and we need to start them with negative adverbs that we studied. So the first one is, we never went to the mountains for our annual holiday. Notice here that we don't have auxiliary verb. So the verb here is went, is the past. We should bring the auxiliary did. So the sentence will be, never did we go to the mountains for our annual holiday. For the second one, B, I rarely said to my mother that I didn't feel like going to school. Rarely is one of these negative adverbs that we talked about. So the sentence will be, rarely did I say to my mother that I didn't feel like going to school. Again, we brought did because said is in the past. The teacher was not in the class, nor were any of the students. We should start it with neither. So here we will say, neither the teacher nor the students, in this simple way, were in the classroom. For D, I never found out where he disappeared to during the PE lessons. So the sentence will be, never did I find out where he disappeared to during the PE lessons. Finally, there was no sign of their presence in the deserted house. We can do it in this way, starting it with no. No sign was there. See, you cannot say no sign there was. It should be no sign was there of their presence in the deserted house. That was all for today's lesson. Prepare your questions for the online discussion that we're going to have after minutes. See you.